Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, missing my co-host, Tyson Gentry. He is out on a work assignment, so unfortunately he is not able to join the podcast tonight. And it's unfortunate because, man, we'll get into it, but Tyson has been carrying this podcast when it comes to the picks. And so he sent me in his 5 picks for the week as well, including a play of the week that we are both 2-0 on. Now we have different ones this week, so we'll go through it. But if you're just tuning into the show, we're going to do the week 1 recap, give you my thoughts, and we give our thoughts on what transpired in week 1. Do a week 2 preview, just some of the biggest games, that things to expect going on into the weekend on Saturday, and then we'll get into money making time where we give out our best bets of the weekend. And so let's just start here. Let's get into the recap screen. Man, I was horrible. I was horrible, guys. 1-4 for the week. Minnesota couldn't get there. Louisiana Tech was brutal, 20.5. I said, don't take Hank Bachmeier, and yet I talked myself into it again this week. North Texas, that was not the right side against Cal, whose offense looked great. And then Baylor, as 27.5-point favorites, got blown out against Texas State. But the play of the week, Penn State 20.5 gets home. Thank you, James Franklin, for running it in with seconds on the clock so I don't put up an over spot. And Tyson 3-2 on the week, only missing the TCU Colorado under 63.5 because that was a shootout. And then Clemson losing outright to Duke. He had him minus 12.5. Also got home Tulane minus 6.5. Washington's team total over 37.5. Then we were simpatico on Penn State's minus 20.5. And so that's the recap. That's what we did in week 1. For the total, because of me, we are down 2.21 units through week 1 of the college football season. Now, Tyson's up 2.65. I'm actually down 3.24 so far. So I need to turn it around so we can get things going. And so that's the situation here on terms of the gambling front. But as far as things went in week 1, I don't think there was any bigger story in the country than what happened in that Colorado game, because that was an electric back and forth game as they took on TCU. And Deion Sanders, after the game, man, he was propping himself up. He was propping his team up. And let's be honest here, I think he had every right to, because they looked extremely good on the offensive end. Now, when it comes to Colorado and for the rest of the season, I do have concerns about their offensive line. I do have concerns about their overall depth as a team. I think they'll get worn down as they go through the Pac-12 season. But to go into a hostile environment and take out a team, albeit a different team, but a team who was in the national championship game last year, is a great sign for this Colorado program moving forward. Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback, Deion's son, he can just flat out play, man. Like, there were questions if he was going to be able to make the leap from the lower level FCS at Jackson State into a Power 5 conference. Well, set a school record with 510 passing yards and threw for 4 touchdowns. They look like they have playmakers on that offensive side. And then Travis Hunter, who was the number 1 recruit in the nation a couple of years ago, was playing both ways at a Power 5 level and was the star of the game. You know, being a receiver, being a lockdown corner, he looked fantastic. And so this Colorado team is going to be fun to watch moving forward. And they got a big one at home against Nebraska this weekend, who did not look good in their game. Like, there is a shot that Colorado starts off the season 2-0 after odds makers predicted that they would not win 4 games this football season. So a great start to the Deion Sanders era there in Colorado. Other things to pick from, Ohio State, they only beat Indiana 23-3. I thought their offense looked anemic. Kyle McCord did not look good as in his first start at Ohio State. The star receivers that we've been touting this entire offseason, they were absent. Mainly that's because they couldn't find him the ball. And so Ryan Day came into the season with some question marks like, hey, if this doesn't go well, could he be on the hot seat? If the offense looks like that and they lose to Penn State, lose to Michigan, don't make the college football playoff, whatever the case may be, there's a possibility he gets fired, because they did not look good. And that's against an Indiana team where they put up 50 points basically every single time they play them. So that was just, quite frankly, unacceptable for an Ohio State team with that much firepower on offense. USC continued to roll. Not really much to take away from what they did against Nevada. But they, again, scored 66 points. I thought big-time performers were Washington, putting up 56 against the Boise State team, who we know always has upset on their mind. And they just completely dominated them in the second half. 28 points in both halves for Washington, only allowed 7 points in the third quarter, shut out Boise State in the fourth quarter, and Michael Penix Jr. making his Heisman case, throwing for 450 yards and 5 touchdowns. Like, this is a team who is making a statement in the Pac-12, like that they are truly, truly contenders. Notre Dame continues to roll. Now, they haven't played anybody, right? But they beat Tennessee State 56-3 after they came back from Ireland. Sam Hartman continues to look good. The stat line's not going to blow you away. Only 194, 2 touchdowns, but it's just the way he looks on the field. There's finally a real quarterback at South Bend for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and they have a shot to, really look good in terms of what they're doing. How about North Carolina? 31-17 over South Carolina on a neutral site game in Charlotte, only allowing 3 points to the South Carolina offense in the second half. And this is a much maligned defense in North Carolina that is mainly the big question mark surrounding what this team can do going forward in the ACC. Drake May lived up to the hype. I thought he looked sensational again, just making plays with his feet. His arm looks spectacular. And the sky's the limit with him at quarterback. Truly. If this defense plays like the way they did, they're going to be really tough to beat. And then you had the headliner to wrap things up for week one. Or I guess not necessarily wrap things up, but on Sunday night, Florida State just absolutely ran away from LSU in a statement game, a big-time statement game. 45-24, dismantling the Tigers in the second half. Florida State scored 31 points. LSU managed to score 7, and it was late in that fourth quarter. And this is a game in the first half that LSU dominated. Like 300 yards, should have scored multiple times, and really should have killed Florida State when they had the chance. But instead, they went into the halftime locker room, only up 3, and gave Florida State life. And then that's what happens. Florida State just ran away from it in the second half. And so this is a great look for Florida State. I think there's still some question marks surrounding what their top end potential could be when you start talking about them in terms of college football playoff contenders. Like, I don't know how they stack up against Georgia or in Alabama, or let's say Ohio State figures it out, or a Michigan, or anybody that we consider a top contender. But that's what we thought LSU was. They're the 5th ranked team in the country, and Florida State just out-physicaled them, pushed them around. That offensive line was dominant against an LSU defensive line that was highly touted coming in. I think the question marks with LSU surround their running game. They did not get really anything except for from their quarterback, Jaden Daniels, who once again was the leading rusher. Like, that just can't be the case for an LSU team moving forward in the Southeastern Conference. Again, there was concerns about Jaden Daniels not wanting to push the ball down the field. I think you saw that in certain times, regardless that he finished with 346 and a touchdown. He's just holds on to the ball and doesn't want to let it rip at times. And I think for LSU to get to that next level that they want to go, he's going to have to take those training wheels off and let it rip down the field. And so this is a team that's not foreign to losing their first game. They lost last year and then rattled off a big-time year down the stretch, winning the SEC West and going to the SEC championship game. So I think the outlook that LSU's dead, I think that's maybe a little misguided. But the offensive line has some question marks. The cornerbacks are overmatched against a much more talented unit that Florida State put up against them. But that's the main thing that you're going to have to keep an eye on with LSU going forward. How do they look in the trenches? Because they got absolutely pushed around by Florida State. And then, my God, Clemson. All we heard this offseason, this offense is going to be much better. Cade Klubnik's here to rescue the day, new offensive coordinator. And they only scored 7 points. Now, they should have scored more. There was some fluky stuff that took place in that game. But Duke outscored them 22-0 in the second half. That just can't happen if you're a Clemson team who wants to get back to the college football playoff and are supposed to be the bullies of this ACC conference. Mike Elko is a legit coach at Duke. And I think he's starting to show that because they were tough. They have guys, they have athletes that were competing with Clemson. And that second half, they took it to them. They really did. They took it to them and dominated the game 28-7 on the final scoreboard. And so that is the week one recap. A lot of good things to take away from there. I don't think, and here's what people are going to do. There's going to be a lot of overreactions to a lot of things. Like, you're already seeing that surrounding Colorado. You're seeing it surrounding LSU. and other teams that put up big numbers against inferior opponents. It's just one data point, right? A lot of this is the first games for many of these teams across the country. So we're going to learn a lot more this week. Still, there's not a lot of good games in week 2. And that's just kind of how it goes, right? Like in week 2, you're still scheduling some cupcakes. You don't necessarily want to put your team out there in case you have championship aspirations that you could fall short. But I still think there are going to be some games that we should keep an eye on and circle as some of these top things that we can pull from. So I'll go through some of the ones quickly here that I think, and then I'll really highlight the top games of the week. But Notre Dame, NC State, that's going to be one to keep an eye on for sure, because this is going to be the first real test for Notre Dame. Now, I don't think NC State necessarily provides like the greatest test they're going to see. It's not an Ohio State. It's not a Notre Dame. It's not a USC. But they have an offensive and defensive line that I think will test Notre Dame in some aspect. How good will Sam Hartman look then? That's something to monitor. Baylor, coming off their embarrassing loss against Texas State, they host Utah. Like, where maybe they looking ahead a little bit, but Blake Shapen out, their quarterback, he's hurt. He's not going to be there. So that offense, there's going to be some question marks, and that defense was completely shredded up. The only saving grace for Baylor is that Utah probably won't have Cam Rising back. Probably not going to get him back for that one. So maybe that is their lifeline, but Utah just pushed around Florida in the SEC caliber an athlete. And so, gosh, what are they going to do to Baylor, who was just dominated by Texas State? And then Nebraska, Colorado, that's the buzzy game of the week. You know, Deion looks great. The Colorado's already ranked in the top 25. What's Shedeur Sanders going to do? Travis Hunter, you know, we got to see what he does as an encore. So that one's going to get a lot of attention on Fox at noon Eastern. So can they repeat that performance? Are the players feeling themselves? Is the coaching staff feeling themselves? And how prepared is Nebraska go into that place, which is going to be absolutely electric. But the main 4 games that I want to highlight on this week 2 stretch, let's give a Power 5 group of 5 game some love here. Ole Miss is traveling in to New Orleans to face Tulane in a game that I think is very interesting. Tulane beat USC last year in a New Year's Six Bowl. They're ranked in the top 25 for a reason. They get their quarterback, Michael Pratt, back. Now, they did lose a lot of production last year, but Jaquan Jackson, the wide receiver, caught 3 balls for 106 yards in last week's game against a South Alabama team that a lot of people were confident in coming into this season. Lawrence Keys, the third, caught 4 balls for 96 yards. Chris Brazel, the second, 4 balls for 53 yards. So this is a potent passing attack with a legit quarterback in Michael Pratt. I think the question mark is going to be on the ground. It's more of a committee. Can they do that against an SEC team, an Ole Miss, who is going to put up points? Like, they're going to score. That's what they're built to do. I mean, they just dismantled Mercer, which is definitely a step down in competition to what they're going to face. But this is going to be a hostile environment, and a team in Tulane that is confident that they can pull off a big upset because they did it last year. It's 7.5. Foreshadowing, Tyson sent me his picks. They could be on that one of his picks. So stay around for money-making time, because that could be something there. But Tulane hosting Ole Miss is going to be a game that I have circled. I definitely want to see that. That's at 3:30 Eastern on ESPN2. Then how about Texas A&M traveling to Miami in what should be an extremely physical game? That's what you would expect. And a game with Miami, like, they want to be a top contender. They want to be a top program under Mario Cristobal. They're going to have to bring it in this one. And Texas A&M, like, all they've heard all offseason, how disappointing they were last season. Oh, you know, they're a bad team. We can't trust them. Jimbo sucks. He's on the hot seat. What does that pressure turn into diamonds for Texas A&M on Saturday? Or are they going to collapse in big moments like they've done in the past? This is a huge game for both programs. Both of them want to get to that next level. One thinks they should be there. They've recruited at a high level in Texas A&M. One, they have to start building things under Mario Cristobal after they completely shit the bed last year. So this is a big game for both programs who want to take that next leap. That's at 3:30 Eastern on ABC, and something I will be tuned into as well. Now, this was setting up to be a good one, Oregon against Texas Tech. But Oregon, or Texas Tech, I should say, they lost outright up in Wyoming. Just not a good performance from them after they were up 17-0 and took their foot off the gas. Like, were they looking ahead to this game? Potentially. I don't know, but you just can't lose that game, especially coming into the season with so much excitement and hype around them. Now, a little subplot here. Tyler Shuck, the quarterback for Texas Tech, he was at Oregon and told he wasn't good enough to play there. Revenge game for old Mr. Shuck here as they host Oregon, who just put it on Portland State, scoring 81 points as Bo Nix gets ready for a Heisman caliber type of season that he wants to show as he gets ready for an NFL draft process as well and wants to highlight his capabilities. So Oregon, they want to make a statement. They want to get into the college football playoff. Texas Tech wants to play spoiler. This is a big game. This is a night game as well. That environment is going to be rowdy, absolutely insane, as that's 7 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And then the premier matchup of the weekend, number 11 Texas is going into Tuscaloosa to face number 3 Alabama. This is easily the biggest game of the weekend, easily has the biggest playoff ramifications for both teams. Texas are the favorites in the Big 12. Alabama, they have been disrespected. They've been told they're not good enough. They're told they're no longer the bullies of college football. And when that happens, we know Nick Saban has something up his sleeve. We know Nick Saban is going to have his guys ready to play. Texas almost beat Alabama last year. If Quinn Ewers doesn't get hurt, I think they actually do beat them. But that was at Austin. This is in Alabama. A different environment. Is Texas going to be ready for it? Sarkisian facing his master, I guess, for lack of a better term, in Nick Saban. After Sarkisian went back and did a reclamation project under Nick Saban as the offensive coordinator there before getting this head coaching job at Texas. So Nick Saban knows the strengths, knows the weaknesses of the Sarkisian offense. And I'm curious to see if Quinn Ewers can live up to the hype here. They got off to a really slow start against Rice before they figured it out. The defense of Alabama is much, much tougher than what Rice posed last Saturday against Texas. So they're going to have to be ready to play. And then the dual threat option of Jalen Milroe and that Alabama offense who's going to want to keep things on the ground in a big moment and I think going to just try to overpower this Texas front. If they can do that and just dominate the line of scrimmage, I like Alabama to win this game, make a statement, and really have people questioning if Texas is back or not. And so those are your big games in week 2. I think it's going to be fun, even though there's no major marquee matchups like on the surface besides Texas and Alabama. I still think we're going to gather a lot. I think we're going to gather a lot from what we see this weekend. It should be fun, as it always is in college football. There's going to be some crazy upsets. And that brings us into money-making time for week 2 in the college football slate. So Tyson has given me his plays. This is what they look like, is the guy wants to stay hot and wants to show that he is the superior handicapper here. And the podcast here, if I said what I said, he likes Notre Dame -7.5. That's at -104 on FanDuel. They're going on the road to face NC State. They have looked extremely good so far this year. Can they keep it rolling? He likes them to -7.5. He also likes Utah -7.5 going into Baylor. After what you saw from Baylor last week, it's really hard to say that there is not a lot of confidence in what Utah will be able to do to that team. And then Nebraska and Colorado under 58.5 for them. That's at -110 on FanDuel. Probably his angle here is that Nebraska is going to want to keep the ball on the ground. That's their way to churn out the clock. They should have an advantage over the Colorado in the trenches, even with the rebuild there. It's a Big Ten team. They're going to have size. They're going to have physicality. And so Matt Rule is probably going to want his offense to run the football and really limit the explosive plays that Colorado puts out. So under 58.5 for him here. He likes Tulane. I teased it earlier. He likes Tulane getting 7 in the hook against Ole Miss at home. It's going to be hard for me to go against that, man. I mean, Tulane's physical. They're ready. They have pedigree that they can beat a Power 5 conference, and they're starting with a head start of 7.5. He likes them here. Those are his boys in the group of 5 versus Power 5 matchup. And then his play of the week is Auburn -6.5 facing Cal, going into Cal and playing them. It's hard for me to say no. It could be a play for me. It could be a play for me, but that's his play of the week. He really likes it. Now, Cal put it on North Texas. Auburn's going to have much better offense and be able to exploit that Cal defense. And so I'll explain a little bit more of my angle with that one. But Tyson's play of the week, Auburn -6.5. He's hit 2 in a row of those and looks to stay hot in week 2. Those are his 5 plays this week. My plays, I'm starting off here, Kansas -3 on Friday night against Illinois. Illinois just did not look very good in their game against Toledo. Like, they should have probably lost that game outright, but ultimately they came through, and now they have to go and travel on the road into a spot that is unfamiliar and facing a Kansas team that's getting their starting quarterback Jalen Daniels back potentially. Now, it's not official. Jason Bean's a capable backup. I'd much prefer to have Daniels. I do think if he's officially announced in that he's going to be the starter, that this line's going to move above the 3. So I'd be comfortable playing it to 3. I have played it at 3. If it moves to 3.5, I would not play this. But I like Kansas giving 3 points at home on Friday night. I'm going back to North Texas for my second play here. I know what they do. What are you doing? They burned you last week. They're giving 12.5 on the road against an FIU team who returns virtually nobody. That team is awful. And they just cannot pass the ball. That's where North Texas is vulnerable. That's where Cal was able to take advantage of. But this offense that North Texas has, they should be able to just dominate anything that FIU is able to do. Like, I watched that Louisiana Tech game with Hank Bachmeier against FIU in week 0, and he was able to exploit that defense. North Texas is going to be able to do the same, and I'm getting them under 2 touchdowns on the road here. I love North Texas -12.5 in a big bounce back game to really take their anger out on what they thought was going to be an upset opportunity against an FIU team who is not good. Now, my third pick, I like Minnesota -20.5 at home against Eastern Michigan. This offense was not anything to write home about against Nebraska, but they're going to be able to air the ball out against Eastern Michigan. So with that in mind, I think we're going to see more explosive plays from Minnesota. I think that plays into what they actually want to do. I thought Nebraska did a good job of being able to limit what we saw to the new starting quarterback, the Greek rifle there in Minnesota. I think they're going to be able to capitalize on this weak defense. This is a really good wide receiver core for Minnesota. I think at home, anything under 3 touchdowns is what I would lay. I'd even lay it if it went to 21. You're just not going to win if it turns out that it's a 3-score game. But I like anything 21 under here for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. My fourth play, Stanford USC 69.5. Can you set a total low enough for what USC is doing right now? This offense is just ridiculous. And Stanford actually looked competent on offense against Hawaii, having to go to the island. And this is a offense under Troy Taylor coming over who wants to establish a new spread type of offense and really update what Stanford does offensively. Instead of that pro-style offense that David Shaw had last year, he's bringing his philosophy over to Stanford and trying to update what they look like in the Pac-12. If they're able to score points on a USC defense that's extremely weak, I don't see how this doesn't reach 80 points, to be completely honest. And now maybe that's just me buying into everything that I've seen, but I expect fireworks in this one. Anything under, quite frankly, 71, I like here. If you're not getting the 69.5 number, but this is locked in here. I love this play. Stanford and USC expect fireworks in the Pac-12 after dark showdown. Auburn -6.5. I'm riding with Tyson's play of the week here. Listen, California's offense looked great. This is an SEC school in Auburn, and it's an offensive mind and Hugh Freeze who's going to be able to attack what the weaknesses of California are. And I expect them to be able to put up points. I don't buy into this new look Cal offense. I don't buy into this new look Cal team where it's all good right now after beating up on a group of 5 team. No, you're going to have to be able to push around an SEC school here in Auburn, and I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So give me Auburn under a touchdown. I would not be shocked if this moved to Auburn -7 before kick. So definitely get this in while you can at Auburn -6.5. That's at -115 on FanDuel. So that juice suggests maybe there is some movement here. Now, for my play of the week, I absolutely love the Roadrunners minus 13.5 at home, hosting Texas State, who just came off their huge victory over Baylor. What are you talking about, Brad? They just upset Baylor. How can you go against them here? UTSA just lost to Houston. This is crazy. UTSA is going to be angry. That's a game they probably should have won. Their quarterback, Frank Harris, just had the worst game of his career with 3 touchdowns. Like, honestly, UTSA probably beats Houston. Advanced analytics and whatever, if you want to look into that, suggests that UTSA should have been the winners if you take out all the unlucky plays here. So I'm going to take them at home, given minus 2 touchdowns. After Texas State's coming off one of their biggest victories in program history, after Texas State has heard all week how good they are, and and UTSA has been sitting there fuming, thinking about a game that they should have won. This is a great spot for them to recharge and to take out their anger on a team that I think they are much better than, regardless of what that upset suggested. So those are my plays of Money Making Time. Those are Tyson's as well. They will all be in the Chalkboard app as well. It's ISWIS presents the Roundtable Bets. It's a free chalkboard where we are throwing around picks, Tyson, myself, and others. Anything that you like during the week. Football's back. NFL is back. We'll have plays in there regarding that sport. College football, obviously. MLB playoffs are around the corner. I mean, if you're a college basketball or an NBA fan, I don't blink, because that's about to start soon. We handicap that. We have our plays in there. Again, it's all free. So go ahead and join in there, and you can give out plays that you like as well. If you like long shot parlays, if you're one of those guys, feel free to throw that into our fun parlay section, just knowing it's probably not going to hit, but let's have a little fun. I mean, why not? And so go ahead and click the link in our description if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening in podcast form, the link is in the description. In the meantime, like, subscribe, and share the show. If you like us on YouTube, smash that like button, because that really helps us out in the algorithm. We really appreciate becoming more discoverable. If you're listening to us in podcast form, send us in a 5-star review. That helps us out as well. And we always appreciate your support. In the football season, we have a ton of content coming out. Make sure you're subscribed, whether it's on YouTube or podcast, so you don't miss anything in any of our content that we put out. And then share the show with a friend. If you like what you're hearing, share the show. We're going to have a ton of fun this season. We're going to have a ton of content. We're going to be doing giveaways, guys, whether that's through anything related to a thing regarding gambling, Amazon gift cards, whatever the case may be. If we're going to have some content stuff that we're giving away, and monetary stuff as well. So keep that in mind. And so we'll do something where we give away stuff, and people like things like that. And always stay connected with us on our social media pages. X, Instagram, TikTok. The handle is the same, at ISWIS_pod. That's going to do it for our week 2 college football episode. Stay tuned for our first week 1 NFL episode. That's going to be coming out later this week as well. If you're an NFL guy, we'll be going through any of the angles that we like regarding betting and Money Making Time. We'll be previewing a lot of the matchups that we have as well as we get started in week 1 of the NFL season. We appreciate you guys listening as always. Make sure to smash that like button on the way out. Give us a 5-star rating on the way out. We will speak to you guys soon. Until then, guys, peace.